Hey, welcome to the party. Let me grab you a drink. How does a shot of tough love sound? Just kidding. That's for another episode. We'll get there. We'll get there. My name's Pat Savage. Welcome to the LuxFit ELIXIR. Episode 4. This is flying by. Let me tell you something. For this episode, I am right chock full of piss and vinegar. And I should clarify, that doesn't mean I'm going to go on a rage rant. I am more so feeling a little rambunctious. And I think that will actually work really well in conjunction with the topics today because they're kind of simple and I'm sort of just laying them out plainly for the purposes of this episode. Two main things we're getting into today: exercise programming and dietetics. And spoiler alert, the dietetics part is going to be a super brief commentary because, again, for today, I don't have that much to say about it. But the common theme, as the episode is titled, I heard that's not good for you. A lot of people have heard something like, I'm in the gym and I'm doing my exercises, and somebody will come by, or in the case of LuxFit, people will be outside walking by, and just a quick little peanut gallery comment, "Oh, that hurts my knees just watching that." Or let's say I'm at a family gathering and a bunch of my relatives are there, and I decide to go and make a little dish for everybody. And let's say it has a bunch of like meat and cheese in it. Aunt Betty comes up and decides she has a ton of opinions about how all those calories aren't good for you. That's going to make you fat. Bonus, she's stuffing her face with M&Ms and Hershey's Kisses. Take those phrases, "oh, it hurts just watching that," or "oh, that's not healthy for you." There are iterations of this that a lot of people will hear all the time, regardless of if you're deep into wellness and fitness or anywhere else. Somebody has a really strong opinion about what's right and what's wrong. Section 1 of 2 today, the area where it's a bit thicker for me because I've spent a lot more time focusing on this and absorbing information over the years, is programming, specifically around like exercise prescription. Here are just 5 movements or methods or principles that I hear people lash out against all the time. Deadlifting, doing a barbell snatch for high reps, doing gymnastics movements with a lot of kipping, swinging around, knees over toes, and squatting below parallel. Okay, let's go through them one by one now. Deadlifting first. "Oh, deadlifting, that's not good for you. You'll hurt your back." Can I hurt my back deadlifting? Of course, I certainly can. But how? I see people deadlift all the time with bad technique. They don't hurt their backs. How come I hurt my back when I deadlift? There are a lot of answers to this, and I don't think many of them are wrong. I think most of them make good points. Generally, let's break it down to just the imbalance principle. You'll sometimes hear people talk about like, well, your pelvis isn't strong enough. You're not getting enough room to deadlift, and then it's pushing your back out of the way. And your hamstrings are tight. Oh, your erectors are underdeveloped. You're not pulling your lats back enough. Imbalance. What is it really? Let's take this. I'm standing, and like somebody gives me a task. They say, stand with your feet wider than your shoulders. And then I want you to, I'm actually doing this just so I'm definitely in camera. And then somebody hands me an object that has some weight on it, and it doesn't even have to be an object. It's just for the sake of the illustration here. I'm holding something, and then someone says, keep holding that object, but lift your leg out of the way so you're only on one leg. And you look at me like this, with my legs all spread out. There's no way that I could just pull one leg up out of my rooting in the ground and hold that object still. I am definitely going to fall. I'm a failure. That kind of imbalance is just the general outline of like why one person might deadlift for not very long and blew my back out. As somebody's balance gets better in terms of like the relationship between their glutes and their hip flexors or their abs and their low back, as those relationships improve and center, so to speak, I go from this is the point where I have to like take something away to balance versus someone gives me an object here and says, all right, now pull a leg away. No problem. I can do that. Right? I can lift this leg. Oh, I can hold this object. Ooh, I can hold this. And then that's where things really start to branch out and you have all these ways that you can now deadlift. Hence all the variations of deadlifting where you don't get hurt. So just to bring that full circle, if I have the one leg, the leg that's super wide over here, and that's the one that has to pick up all of the work, right? If I have the other leg lifted, this one has to do all the work. In a lot of cases for people, it's this leg is their low back. The muscles in their low back are just doing everything they can to help somebody deadlift that weight up. And this leg that's been taken away is hamstrings, glutes, anything else you really want to add into that list that are most likely not developed well and they're not contributing to your deadlifting technique, right? So that's why, again, this is an instant example of you take those out of the equation, boom, you collapse. But what really happens is you find some way to compensate, right? Let's do it again. This is fun. Oh my goodness. If I'm like this and someone says, pull your leg away, oh, I'm falling, right? What can I do though? Oh, maybe I can just shift all the weight over like this, put all of the stress on my low back, lift. Oh my God, I got it for a second. Look, it was just enough for me to deadlift the weight up. Deadlift rep successful. I pulled it from the ground to standing. That's a rep. I did it. But I had to compensate so much. I had to lean into my low back so much to lift it up. That's imbalance. And this is where things get really nuanced from person to person. You'll have different athletic backgrounds or different postural habits, whatever. Those are, I guess, the most common ones. And you'll end up with a really wide variety of human beings who are in a class setting, let's say, all doing deadlifts together. And it's really difficult to parse out what does this person need and what does this person need. Do most people in the modern world need to develop better length in their hamstrings? Probably. Do they need to get better length in their glutes? Probably. Do they need to get better strength in their mid and upper back? Probably. One thing that's guaranteed to help is to have somebody with a coach's eye look at you, do whatever movement it is. It doesn't have to be deadlifting. And they'll be able to assess where maybe an imbalance lies. I don't know. But before we move on to the next thing, let's round this out with using strongman for a comparison. If you go and look up a quick video or already know what it looks like when a strongman has to pick up an Atlas stone from the ground and pick it up and put it on this big pedestal in front of them, they are not lifting it with a textbook picture perfect neutral spine, but they're also not picking it up in pain. So what a conundrum, right? For the insane amount of content out there on the internet talking about how important it is to deadlift and hip hinge with your spine neutral, there are these guys that are just a billion times stronger than most humans on earth doing this with a deliberately rounded back, picking up a stone that's hundreds of kilograms. I don't actually know. Super American. So what that tells me is that the human body is extremely capable of adapting to positions. If a strong man can adapt his spine to be safe while lifting something extremely heavy in front of him without pain, then if you're just bending over without any weight and you have pain, that means there's a very serious imbalance that needs to be worked through. My answer to that, still to come. But let's move on to the second and the third thing I mentioned in this list of 5, snatching, high repetition, and kipping movements on pull-up bars is the general way to categorize this. And I think there's no real surprise here. I can't hide it. I'm mostly referring to CrossFit. And I have no beef with CrossFit. I did CrossFit for, I still kind of do it. I still love it. How do I say this? I think CrossFit's amazing. And I'm biased because I have done it for well over a decade now. The amount of shit that I've learned from being a CrossFit athlete and being a CrossFit coach compared to other things that I've learned about over the years, it's not even close. Almost everything I've learned in the real world has come from being in a CrossFit gym, just because of the crazy breadth of things going on in a given gym. But for every single thing I've learned and loved about CrossFit, I can go on to the old YouTube and look up some workout or some event that was broadcast, and the comments will be ripe with people trashing on it. And even though pretty much any movement has been criticized in some capacity, the 2 highlights are definitely Barbell cycling overhead with, relatively heavy weight for high repetitions, and people flailing around on pull-up bars, whether it be swinging your feet to the bar or swinging to do pull-ups or swinging to do muscle-ups. And what's interesting about something like high rep snatching is a lot of bold assumptions are made. And some people have valid points in saying, oh, I think as I watch this person do 75 snatches in a row and their technique starts to break down gradually as the workout goes on, maybe that's not the safest way to go about it. I would say you're probably right. Depends on the situation. Are they in a training session? Are they in a testing environment? Are they in a competition environment? A lot of those things really make a big difference for what you are observing and how you should evaluate it. In a perfect world, like if you're sitting in a physics lecture and you're saying, yes, the spine needs to be perfect at all times while lifting heavy weight. Sure, but does every person in every sport sacrifice their body to some extent to get an edge over other people they're competing against? Yes. So with a movement like this that gets tons of attention and tons of hate, I think it's really important to take a step back and say, why is this person doing that movement? And are they even asking for my advice about it or my comment on YouTube? I mean, you're totally free to do the comments on YouTube, but are you helping people by saying that it's a terrible idea to do it? And if we strip away most of it, we're left with, is it a good idea to snatch high repetitions over and over and over and over and over again? And this comes back to the bold assumption that a lot of people make, which is that it's like as if this well-conditioned athlete is grabbing this barbell that looks pretty heavy to most outside observers, and they're going repetition after repetition after repetition and getting tired. And people are saying, that's absurd. That's not the design of the Olympic weightlifting snatch. It's like, no, I guess not. In the Olympics, no. But there's so much versatility of all movements. And this athlete in particular that we're trashing on has absolutely been training at high volume to build up a tolerance to that. It would be just the same as if you have somebody that's been couch potatoing for years and say, hey, go run 26.2 miles. Is that what it is? Marathon. And they, after half a mile, vomit and pass out and need an IV in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. And then a week later, they're like, finally I can relax. And then drill sergeant comes back in, get back out there, 26.2. And then this time they make it a mile, but then they still puke and need an IV. And that pattern continues, right? This goes with pretty much everything in the gym. And a lot of people only see that very final product where these very elite athletes are performing, competing, and saying, wow, what a terrible idea. As if they were a couch potato that was just like, yep, hold my beer, I'll do that. Snatch, 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 snatch. Their spines, like the strongman, have definitely developed to tolerate some amount of movement while they do that up and down, right? So, is the harsh judgment really necessary? I don't know. Flailing around on the pull-up bar. There's a guy, I think he's really funny, and he rips on CrossFit, and he's made a thing out of going 0 when people are doing reps on those bars. I'll be more brief with this one because it's the same sort of idea as this high rep snatching, which is that there's a really bold assumption that this person who's flailing on the pull-up bar has no idea that you're supposed to do a strict pull-up to build strength. I've got news for you. They know that, and they do strict pull-ups in their program without a doubt. The intention of the movement that you're doing is what matters. If I'm trying to do a lot of work in a short period of time, I'm going to use my whole body to get that work done. If my target is to just build strength in a particular group of muscles, then I'm going to do the movement more strict, isolate those muscle groups, build strength there. Maybe over time, now I'm going to hybridize those. I have more strength to pull, catch up with these lats, dog. And I have more technique in gymnastics to get a really good rhythm going. Best of both worlds, am I right? Oh, but you're going to injure your shoulder. The rotator cuff is not designed to do this movement. Answer to that coming later. All right, exercises 4 and 5 in the haterade cocktail that is the internet. Knees over toes and squatting below parallel. And I think this is the great one. All I want to say about this is that what I'm observing is this revolution of old movements, classic movements from, more than 100 years ago maybe, are really starting to bubble back up. And it's amazing. There are a few notable people, some who have been around for most of this century displaying their wares, and some who are a little bit more meteoric in their popularity as of late, have really been doing a great job of pushing the simplicity of making the human body work the way that it was designed to work. Many, many, many years ago, people were doing all these crazy types of squatting that in the 90s and early 2000s just sort of faded from existence. And not entirely, there were still people in the background doing it. But then if you showed somebody doing some of these crazy squat variations or press variations in 2005, they would scoff. Please never show me that video ever again. Now here we are in 2022. A lot of the movements that when I was a kid learning and being told that things like this are absolutely going to hamper your progress and or injure you are taking the world by storm. And people are doing it and feeling better than ever. So fucking weird. The general idea here is that you're utilizing the mechanical range of motion that your body's capable of and slowly training it and adapting it to tolerate that. Whether that be full overhead range of motion or full knee flexion or full ankle range or full hip range, anything. And this includes also the spine. Oh my goodness, don't even get me started on how much the spine can do. For most of us, we've lost that capacity to do these crazy movements and use these full ranges of motion. And slowly introducing methods that will build that back up is making people feel like their bodies are invincible again. So what happened? Where 100 or more years ago, we have this whole basket of movements that then were smuggled. And in the 2000s, boom, they're back. How did that happen? I don't know. But wow, would I be remiss if I didn't bring up that I have heard so many anecdotes about this is why people shouldn't do this.
Oh, yeah, I don't let my clients sumo deadlift because it's bad for the hip.
Oh, that's interesting. What's your viewpoint on why it's bad for the hip?
I did it once and it hurt my hip.
So squatting below parallel and putting your knees over your toes when you're squatting, for example, is it possible that at some point someone decided that it was dangerous because they hurt their knee squatting deep because they squatted deep without having that range of motion trained? So let's do a flashback to 1992, guessing. I'm the same guy who time traveled back.
Don't squat below parallel. It's bad for your knees.
Oh, that's an interesting viewpoint. Why is that? Oh, side note, my hair fits way better in 1992 than 2022. Actually, maybe not. It's so in now. It's pretty cool either way.
Because I squatted deep and I fucked my knee up real bad. Therefore, it is bad.
Did that then get published in a Men's Health magazine a few years later? Don't squat below parallel. Don't put your knees over your toes. Because some person who's absolutely jacked to the gills and is the clear paragon of health said that it's not healthy. Is it plausible? I'm going to argue yes. Maybe it wasn't just one guy. It might have been a slow build of people all in a very similar demographic in similar, like the pumping iron lifestyle of only doing partial reps to get massive. Great, you look great. But if you're not training your full range, if you're doing leg extensions and getting massive quads, but never actually training that knee to flex back down, will squatting deep with weight all of a sudden cause an injury? Potentially. Even if I'm not Sherlock Holmes and I haven't just done open and shut case there, Johnson, there's no denying that one person's experience with something and that history that they have with a movement could lead to a pretty permanent stance or viewpoint. And isn't this a great segue? A personal history leading to a viewpoint. Let's talk dietetics. Story time, story time, story time, story time, story. We're winding it back to my college days again. I was on campus and I was in a, nutrition and dietetics class. I can't remember. Big lecture hall. Older woman teaching the class. She's going through biology stuff. I don't know, talking about the Krebs cycle or something. At some point during this, she's basically connecting the dots of here's the biology and here's why eating carbs, eating your 6 to 11 servings of grains a day is vital for human health. And everybody's in, they have this was a long time ago. Everybody just has their folders out on the little fold-out table. Man, that brings back memories to think about that. And just furiously writing carbs, 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 cereal, bread. Then, let's say for the sake of the story, I went straight from that class over to a biology class across campus. So here I am, and I sit my butt down in a biology lab. And the professor there is a much younger woman, and she's giving us a rundown of glycolysis and pyruvate oxidation and, the Krebs cycle. I remember that. And electron transport. Oh my goodness, it's the whole chain of energy creation. Wow. And at some point she mentions,
I don't really get why the Atkins diet gets so much hate. I've seen lots of people not eat carbs and just feel so healthy, look great.
And I'm sitting there like, my notes from this other class, another professor on this faculty in the same program as you just said the exact opposite thing. That might have been the birthplace of my adult skepticism of pretty much everything. And no disrespect to either of those professors. And that's a true story. Like I said, I might have fabricated a little bit of the timing, but it was the same semester, 2 different professors that came from 2 very different eras saying the opposite thing about carbohydrates. Is it plausible that the older woman who grew up with the food pyramid has a permanent viewpoint about the importance of grains and whatever the fuck is, the big one at the bottom of the pyramid, versus Miss Youngbuck over here, who lived in Miami for 5 years during college, did the South Beach diet, and got an absolutely bodacious bod. They have very different personal histories. And just like if you have it's like your 2 best friends, they start arguing about something, and then they turn to you and they say, whose side are you on? And you always want to say, I don't want to pick sides here. That can be the case here as well. You can respect both of these viewpoints without having to say,
carbs are God.
Carbs are the devil.
What's dangerous to me in health and wellness is dealing in extremes and people who get kind of radicalized and say, you must do this to be healthy. You must do this exercise to get in shape. If anybody ever writes or tells you, you must, then you probably must not. Or if they say, this will fix all your problems, it probably will not. So let's bring it back to Mr. Paragon of Health, Mr.
I would never squat below parallel because my knees got completely ruined from doing it.
Then let's go way back to my Aunt Betty putting tidal waves of M&Ms in her mouth while telling you that your little meat and cheese platter is unhealthy. That's not healthy. I'm really overweight and you're ripped. That's not healthy. I mean, she's basically the paragon of health's antithetical demon. And it's crazy. Neither of them are able to take a step back and say, oh, well, maybe I hurt my knees squatting because I just never trained them to do that. Or maybe I shouldn't be throwing stones at my nephew who's in great shape while I am the blueberry girl from Willy Wonka. You might have a personal history that gives you a viewpoint that's really hampering your ability to take a step back and observe yourself and others in a less judgmental way. Just a disclaimer, for the record, I do think that judgment is a very natural and innate human behavior. But we're not getting it. What I keep circling back to internally now is, what are we fighting for? If you're attacking somebody else's fitness methodology or program or whatever they're selling, or you make an Instagram post and you say, Pat Savage's program, poop emoji, who's that helping? There's success and good health and really high output performance in pretty much every exercise program I've ever done myself or observed. And that, even in my tiny world right now that I'm still like trying to expand all the time, that's enough evidence for me to say that choosing to say that one thing is good or one thing is bad is a great way to self-install some high quality blinders where all you see is what you want to see straight in front of you. Now, the answer that I was being all mysterious about earlier is sort of built around a mantra that I have, which is building strength at length. And that is to say, you want to be able to stretch a muscle and, it's the tendons therein and maybe the adjacent ligaments that are all involved in a movement. They need to be able to tolerate full range of motion with load. That much to me has been a constant across all sports, all types of fitness, to help people not get injured or correct injuries and imbalances that they have. And to even break that down into something more tangible, you have to decide for yourself, what do you want to do with your exercise? If you want to do CrossFit, but you don't have the foundational tools to be able to safely hold a barbell over your head or do your killer rotator cuff swinging on a pull-up bar or do your deadlifting, then you need to back up and work on that. But do you need all those tools to go do boot camp classes? No. Could somebody make a decent argument that you should still do it anyway? Sure. But if you're struggling with, I want to do this thing, but it causes me pain, the answer is to stop doing the thing that causes you pain, figure out why it's causing you pain, and go fix that problem. And it's way easier said than done. And I think most people even do know that in the back of their minds. They'll maybe be in a boot camp class and they're doing squat and press. And every time they press, they're like, ooh, shoulder, ooh, little pinch, I'm sure it'll fix itself. Months go by, now you have tendinosis in your shoulder. Dang it, I guess it didn't fix itself. You have to accept that if you want to do Olympic weightlifting or CrossFit, when you're watching those people that do it really well, they've been working on it for years. There are, of course, going to be exceptions. Some people do just walk into a gym and have incredible coordination and kinesthesis, but you can't focus on outliers either, right? Small, tiny, consistent steps are really what makes the difference. This is another thing that I'm starting to see make a nice comeback on the internet. Why did I say it's making a comeback on the internet? That's like I'm saying that the internet was around in 1910. Kind of stupid. No, you know what? I'm doubling down on it. My review of the internet in 1910, 0 out of 5 stars. Blech. Obviously, what I meant to say and what I've implied heavily through these first 4 episodes is that the internet is a really crazy double-edged sword. And I really like seeing in my network a lot more of people explaining that you have to do the little things really consistently if you want to do the big flashy things eventually. So in summation on the exercise programming part of today, the people I see who are doing the best with themselves and with people they train or with friends that they're giving advice to is they've done a lot of absorbing from many different disciplines, which to me is a really good indicator of some maturity in saying, maybe the one way that I thought isn't the only way. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but it's definitely not the only way that people can be healthy. That much is clear to me. And with nutrition, where, people are getting insanely irate over something that to me is a really novel science still and is changing so much all the time. What I settle back on now is if you want to tell me a diet that you hate, that you think is terrible for humans, I can show you a person who's on that diet, thriving on that diet, absolutely yoked, and has an incredible blood panel to boot. Doesn't matter what it is. Carnivore, I got you. Meat and vegetables, I got you. Vegan, here's one. Intermittent fasting, here's one. Keto, Kobe. The closeout homework is related to diet this time. And as a self-proclaimed non-diet expert, I'm going to suggest for your easy option to do after watching this episode, go eat something that you enjoy. Doesn't matter what the health index is on it generally, but the hard option is built into it, which is to eat whatever that is, and then really take, a handful of minutes or more and think about how you feel eating that. And I'm not just saying physically, I'm saying how do you feel about yourself from eating that food that you enjoy? If it happened to be a Cobb salad and you ate it and you're like, I feel really good. I'm so glad that I enjoy that food. Good for you. And you can even spend more time embracing what you really liked about eating that food. Or maybe you go to McDonald's and you get a Big Mac and that's what you eat. Then sit with those feelings. How does that make you feel? Now that's it. I promise I have nothing else to say on this topic today. Thank you so much for watching and or listening, especially if it's been since the beginning. I've had a lot of fun kind of learning how to navigate my own brain and get thoughts out. And I think I'm getting better as I go. I don't know. We'll see. I'm really excited for what's coming up next. Thanks for watching. Please dislike, report, and unsubscribe.